All right, you guys, thank you so much for coming today. Especially, I know it has been one heck of a week, and we're a little group, but a mighty group of folks who persevere and show up to learn stuff, even despite the craziness that's happening in our community. So I know Kenneth and myself can both say that personally we are fine. Both of our facilities have been rocked a little bit, but as you guys saw, animal habitats are great. We just have some pathway and fence damage, and we're really grateful to our staff and volunteers who came and have helped with cleanup, and we're really happy to be getting back to normal. So thank you guys for showing up despite the craziness and letting us do what we do best, which is teach people about nature and conservation and environmental issues. And today we are going in a new direction than we typically go. We're typically a little bit more marine focused, and so today is a fun diversion for us. As I said in the gift shop up there, my name is Taryn, and I'm the education manager here, and this is the classroom for Marineland. So this is my home away from home. Make yourselves comfortable. There's nothing fancy about this room, so settle in and be at home. Just a couple of things for you to know. If over the course of the next hour or so you need a restroom break, the restrooms are right out the door and immediately to your right and on the right. Because it's windy, the doors are locked right now, but just unlock them. It's a regular lock. You can let yourself out. And then also, if you need to take or make a phone call, you can step right outside and do that. Do please put your phones on silent. So if you get a phone call, you know it, but the rest of us don't. And when we walked through that gate over there on the other side, it technically was bringing us into a behind the scenes area. And really all that means is that there's no longer a big wall or a big fence between us and the dolphins, which means that by law, either a staff member or a volunteer needs to kind of keep our eye on you to make sure you're not going to do anything crazy like jump in the water with our dolphins. So if you do step out to take a phone call or to go to the restroom or anything, just know that one of us are going to keep our eye on you just to make sure that everybody's doing okay. All right. And then when the lecture is over today, we are all going to walk back over together like we came this way. We'll go back over to the other side, and then we'll just leave you over where the dolphins are because, like I said, you guys have free access all day long to hang out, see our dolphins, see the sharks, see the sea turtles. And that's really the intent of this program, is to get you guys who are probably fans of the GTM Research Reserve, that's probably how you heard about this, to Marineland, so that we can really kind of unify our audiences of folks who all have similar tendencies to love nature. So we want you to stick around and see Marineland, and we've got some of our best staff and volunteers in here who I'm sure would love to show you around and tell you about our animals afterwards. So give them a chance to shine and do what they do best, okay? So with that, thank you guys so much for coming. Everybody okay? Everybody's homes are okay? Let's just be personal for a minute. You're all okay, good. Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to turn this over to Kenneth.
Thank you, Taryn. All right. So a couple of just logistic things. So my name is Kenneth Raynor. I'm the Education Director for the GTM Research Reserve. And we are broadcasting live to YouTube right now, so it records our presentations. And we actually can have audiences on YouTube Live as well. So I'm going to be kind of playing a dual role here of jumping back and forth between presentation and the YouTube Live thing. So just bear with me. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So and thank you again, like Taryn said, thank you guys for coming out today for the presentation. I'm using the mic because of the YouTube Live thing as well. It just helps pick up sound better there. Just logistically, though, with this program is we do have surveys that we'll provide at the end of today's talk. If you guys can just fill that out for us, that'd be greatly appreciative, because essentially you guys shape the programs that we deliver. We looked at the surveys last year, and that's what shaped our programs for this year. And then we also have additional information about the reserve and Marineland Dolphin Adventure back in the back on your way out. So today's talk it's our second of this year along the theme of conservation, and that's how we've kind of guided all of the upcoming talks all the way until May. Today's talk takes a little bit of a turn, like Taryn said, on focusing more on global conservation versus kind of a local conservation. And so just real quick, for those, if you want to look at the presentation later on and here in the room, you're welcome to on our YouTube channel. For those that are watching online, there is a link at the bottom of the presentation here, and I'm sorry, I just covered it up, but there's a link there that will take you to the actual presentation and the slides. So you're welcome to go back through the slides if you want, because there are some links on there that have some really cool videos that I encourage you guys to check out afterwards. But essentially, our talk today is on pangolins or pangolins. I come from Texas, and so if you guys know Texans, we like to split up every single word that we do and pronounce it kind of weirdly. So I say pangolins or pangolins. It's actually pronounced pangolins. And these guys are the armored ambassadors, and that's going to be a kind of a constant theme throughout this presentation. All right. And if you guys have any questions throughout any of the presentation, please feel free to ask. I love having open dialogue throughout the presentation. I'm not a big fan on the whole lecture setting, and then at the very end we ask questions. So if you have questions right then and there, just feel free to ask away. And the same goes for those watching online. If you have questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box that's there. Okay, so moving forward. So Pangolin Conservation, a little bit about us is, I will say, so I mentioned that I am the education coordinator for the GTM Research Reserve, but at this point I'm putting on a new hat where I serve on the board of directors for the Pangolin Conservation, which is a nonprofit organization. And initially this presentation was going to be given by the founder and director of Pangolin Conservation, which is Justin Miller, seen here in the photograph. He sends his apology that he can't be here today. He's actually still in Togo, Africa, doing this conservation work out there. So he did tell me, granted his facility has power right now, he's going to be on the YouTube live. So if I can't answer any of your questions, hopefully he'll be able to answer the questions. And if we both can't answer them right now, then I will get your information and definitely find the answers for you. Pangolin Conservation is a nonprofit organization that was established in 2014. The goal of it is for the essentially the conservation of these armored ambassadors, the pangolins. What's neat about this and what ties it to this community is that it is based out of St. Augustine, Florida, and with focus on West Africa, which is kind of cool to have that here locally and expand it globally, kind of thing. So. How I got interested in this. So my background is I am involved in ocean sciences and marine sciences. I love the water. I'm a water baby. I have to be near the water all the time. And so how did I get involved in this, essentially this land-based organism? Because I'm not a land person. I like to be out in the water. So I wanted to talk about how I came involved with this to show how I relate to this whole organization in the first place. So first off, this animal, the pangolins, are incredibly unique organisms, and you will get a chance today to see an actual pangolin, and you'll see how unique they are with their scales, their tongue, their claws, their tail. They are just one of the coolest mammals that I have ever experienced. So first off, I just find them incredibly fascinating. Second is these organisms, even though they are so awesome and so cool, humans are having one of the greatest impacts on their populations. They are one of the most illegally trafficked mammal in the world, which is kind of crazy to think because we know very little about them. It's only actually been in the past 5 years that pangolins have started becoming in the media. If you guys watched how many of you watched the latest Jungle Book movie? Nobody's watched? One person, two people, okay. The Jungle Book movie, the new one. There's actually a pangolin in the new Jungle Book movie, which is kind of cool. So we have a huge impact on this organism, and I think that's important that these conservation efforts are being put towards this organism because of that. One of my personal passions is understanding, as an educator, I love doing research and looking into research about understanding people's cultural models and how people are thinking when we're trying to have effective conservation, how do you frame those conversations so that those cultural models and compromises can be made to have actual conservation take place? And I think with this pangolins are not located in America. They're located in Africa, which is a completely different culture. And so understanding those new cultural models to have effective conversation, I think, is really awesome. And it's been really neat to learn those cultures that are over there regarding the species as well. And then last is that this organism is truly a quintessential definition of an ambassador. The things that have come from just the past 2 years of conserving the species through Pangolin Conservation, the ambassador capabilities of this organism is really cool, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. And this is actually an awesome image of a perfect example of how the pangolins can be an ambassador. This is a bark spider, and it's pretty creepy looking, yeah, perfect for Halloween. But this is actually a newly discovered species of bark spider. And this was discovered based on being over there in Togo and initializing the Pangolin conservation efforts. This would have never been discovered if we would have gone over there and started looking for pangolins and helping conserve them. So I think this is one of the really cool examples, and it's pretty creepy. If you can imagine, so that's a wrist. So that's sitting on a wrist right now. I know, it's kind of cool. I think it's cool. Sorry guys, I'm gonna get some coffee. All right. So jumping into pangolins, just a background about pangolins initially is that there are 8 extant species currently on Earth. 4 of these species are located in Asia, and the 4 that I have highlighted in red are the ones that are located in Africa. And so some of the key features to note regarding these species is the ones that are highlighted in red and the ones that are found in Africa, they are listed as vulnerable. And so vulnerable kind of sits in the middle of the scale of whether a species is endangered or not. And so it goes, I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind what the one before vulnerable is, but then it's vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, and extinct. And that's the steps to this. And so these guys are very close to becoming endangered. Then if you look at the Asian species, they are listed either as endangered or critically endangered. And so that actually is playing a key role in why conservation efforts are being put towards Africa and the African species of pangolins. And I'll get into that in a second. So we have our 8 species. The one that we focus on in Pangolin Conservation is the White-Bellied Pangolin. And this is an image of the White-Bellied Pangolin, and you will get to see a White-Bellied Pangolin. They are small arboreal animals, which means that they live in trees. I love that word, arboreal. And they are nocturnal, so everything happens at night for these guys. They are found in West and Central Africa. They can get, they're one of the smaller of the tree species. So if that gives you a hint, that 3¼ feet, I mean, that's still pretty long, but they are one of the smaller ones, and they can get to about 3 to 6 pounds. So they weigh they're pretty light. As mentioned before, they are listed as vulnerable. So they are on their way to becoming endangered. And to give emphasis towards that, there was a research that was recently conducted and starting in 2014 that said in the next 12 years, if trends keep with what's affecting this population, is that they're going to be 40% gone. Just 40% no longer on planet Earth, which is kind of crazy. And to give another scale regarding how threatened how threatened pangolins are as a whole, is that just in 2016, so starting January 1, 2016 up until now, so far 42,000 pounds of scales, and these are their scales, have been confiscated due to illegal trafficking. And that is all 8 species. That includes all 8 of the pangolin species. But that's 42,000 scales equals roughly about 30,000 pangolins. And if you were to put a market value on that to show you essentially why this illegal trafficking is happening, is that was worth about $12.5 million in scales. So, yes.
Is
That is it. It was the question was asked about Asian influence on medicinal purposes. We'll get to that. That's a good question. But yes, essentially yes. But I'll elaborate more in a little bit. This species particularly are threatened because of one, local consumption, two, illegal trafficking, and three, they're being harvested for medicinal purposes. But not only in Asian influences, but also African influences as well for medicinal purposes. And just to show you, so going back on some really cool features of this guy, and I forgot to mention, I apologize, let me go back. One of the cool features that I think is really neat about the pangolins is their tongue. So a lot of people think that they're related to anteaters because of their tongue, or they think they're related to armadillos just because, I mean, it looks like an armadillo. They are actually more closely related to cats and dogs than they are to anteaters or armadillos. They are essentially have the diet and the diet of a carnivore, so they're considered carnivores. But their tongue is really neat. Their tongue actually will extend is the length of their body, not including their tail, but it's the length of their body. And they actually have a sheath that runs inside of their body along the side of it. That's where the entire tongue is hidden until it needs to come out and do its scraping of finding things. So that's one really cool feature. The other cool feature is you can see the scales here. So the scales are actually, the material of the scale is keratin, which is the same material that makes our hair and our fingernails. And once we pull out our scar, you'll be able to feel the scales and that they are really hard. So imagine, this is kind of gross, but imagine your big toenail. That's kind of the feeling and texture and strength of these scales. And so you can imagine this is a great protection for this organism. But one other way that they protect themselves is imagine how a turtle protects itself. Some turtles protect themselves is that they can go back into their shells, right? This guy, what they'll do is when they feel threatened, they will get into a really tight ball where all their soft parts and everything will be hidden, and they just have this shield of scales around them. Just really kind of cool. And I want to show you an example of that. And I apologize if you can't see this online, but if you access the presentation, you'll be able to see it. But this is an African golden cat, or an African gold cat, attacking a pangolin. And there's the tree pangolin crawling, looking for food. And just like a typical cat, there it is. And see how he rolls up into a little ball? Yep. And you'll see him pulsating. There's not sound to this video, but usually when they are not happy, they do this hissing sound, and that's probably, that pulsating is it hissing, like it trying to seem more intimidating, like this, what is that intimidating ball that's just hissing at me? And it'll stay there until it feels non-threatened anymore. And then once the cat leaves, it'll unroll itself and continue along its way. Unfortunately, I don't. That's a really good question. I would assume that they would stay rolled up like that for as long as the threat is there. Yeah. All right. Okay. So their habitat for the white-bellied tree pangolin, this is actually a picture that Justin took recently in Togo, Africa. And I'm sorry, for Togo, Africa, this is a bad representation because I don't have the map, but if you imagine Africa, okay, and then here is the Atlantic Ocean. Togo is kind of in the armpit of Africa on the western coast. It's a very slender country that's right here in the armpit, and it's right next to Ghana. And if you guys listen to NPR where she's like, Accra, she says she's the correspondent from Accra, that's Accra, Ghana, and then Togo is right next door. That's how I think about it, because I just like the way she says it. But so anyways, this is in Palame, Togo, which is in southern Togo. And this is a mountain range that's there in Palame, and there's actually, this is a waterfall. And so they are found within this very dense thicket of forest. They're also the white-bellied pangolins are known to be found in agricultural fields where they grow the palms for palm oil as well. And you'll see the effects of what that can have on a pangolin when I pull out Scar. He got his name for a reason. And this this picture is actually a really cool representative again of why this animal is an ambassador, because as Justin was in search for the white-bellied tree pangolins, he came across this waterfall and this pool that's underneath, and found little tadpoles, and those tadpoles ended up being Togo slippery frogs, which were thought to be extinct, which is, I mean, again, that's so cool that this organism has led to these things being rediscovered and found. And that has influences on being able to conduct research out here, and we'll get into that. Sorry, I don't want to jump ahead. Okay, so with the issue of the white-bellied tree pangolin, starting off with uses in Africa. So the main use in Africa is for bushmeat. They eat the pangolins, it's food. These are actually pangolins that were seen in one of the markets, and this is actually this is a market that was in Accra, Ghana, which is right next door. They are hunted using snares and claw traps, and the culture behind the pangolins and meat in general there is that eating meat is thought to bring and contribute to a long life, which is, I mean, so you can imagine that you just can't go over there and say, okay, stop doing what you're doing. You can't, because these people depend on this for food and sustenance and their livelihood and things like that. So it takes a whole new different approach of thinking about how to conserve this species, which I think is really cool. Additional uses in Africa is that this was actually a picture that's taken in a voodoo market in Lomé, Togo, and this is pangolin skin with the scales, and they believe that the scales will help protect from evil spirits, that it attracts wealth, and that it's used for courting a lady. All right, that's a great diamond ring right there, I guess. The medicinal purposes in Africa are thought to treat, they use it to treat rheumatism, infertility, menstrual cramping, headaches, heart disease, asthma, mental illness, charms for chiefs. I mean, we go on, bedwetting, fever, STIs, wound treatment. All of these are, it's kind of one of those miracle drugs that just treats everything. And if you guys know anything about miracle drugs that treats everything, you know that that's usually bogus. So, no better way to say that. The uses in Asia, though, they don't really, well, I don't want to say they don't eat them, because one of the newer trends in Asian cultures is after a business meeting, they have started, will eat pangolin meat as to signify like we've had a very successful, and this is going to be a successful partnership and relationship kind of thing. And so that's one of the newer trends, is eating pangolin meat after one of these business meetings to help to show that this is going to be a successful partnership kind of thing, which I think is interesting. But they do focus a lot on the medicinal uses, which is they believe that it will treat asthma, the psoriasis, it'll actually cure cancer. It helps with blood circulation, inflammation, parasites, back pain, pneumonia prevention, and will heal injuries. As you can imagine, there no scientific evidence of any of these things. I mean, when's the last time your fingernail helped treat something for you? So, as you can see, that's an issue. That's an issue that has to be overcome, because that's a cultural belief. That's not, and that's goes long deep into the cultures. So, you can't just go over there and say, okay, stop doing this. That's not how it works. So what's cool about what Pangolin Conservation is, their approach to the conservation of the white-bellied tree pangolins and pangolins in general is looking at this ecosystem-based approach. So meaning that it's a multifaceted approach of trying to conserve this species. So not only we're trying to do the research to better understand these species, but you do the education, which then leads to the conservation, and then you bring in other organizations to help with this. It's a whole ecosystem-based approach. So one of the things that have started is all this research. We know so little about pangolins, especially the white-bellied tree pangolin. It amazes me of actually how little we know. For example, we think that they give birth once a year to usually one baby. Sometimes it's twins, and so that tells you something about their sustainability right there. Is that if they're only having one baby a year, how sustainable, if you continue to harvest this, is it? We are not sure how long the gestation period is. We think it's anywhere between 140 days to 300 days, so that's something we're looking into. Their diet is a very unique diet, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. We know very little bit about the actual habitat that they utilize or how large their population size is. We can guesstimate based on what their range is, kind of, but we still are not quite sure a good estimate of what their population size is. And then we would like to better understand what the trade is there, essentially, and what how the local people are consuming the pangolins. So there's a lot of research that's being planned and hopefully will take place. There's actually 3 large-scale research projects that will be starting in 2017 with the local university there on understanding their habitats and their range sizes, which is really cool. And it's actually opened the door for an opportunity for citizen science opportunities over here to help over there, which I think is, I'll get in that in a little bit. It's a really cool thing. The other, so the other approach, if looking at the ecosystem-based management approach, is the community engagement, engaging the local community. So this is an Ewe man outside of Agome in Togo, Africa. And the Ewe people are incredible. Their culture is so interesting. And I do encourage, there's the link to learn more about their culture. But the concept is we want to open up dialogues with the local people there to better understand how they're consuming the pangolins, and see if there's ways of discussing sustainable harvest of the pangolins, because the people there do recognize that they are catching, 1, they're catching less pangolins, and 2, they're catching smaller pangolins. So it's the concept of kind of like not fishing, but hunting down the food web. And so they understand that. So if we can bridge the gap of sustainable harvest for the people there, imagine the conservation that can happen then after that. But first we have to know, what does sustainable mean with those populations? So additional really cool thing that has started coming from this is they're creating a network of citizens, local citizens there, to be the eyes and ears of Pangolin conservation. And so what's actually started coming from this is there's been, the locals have started, been on the watch for illegal international trade, and they've actually, Pangolin Conservation right now is researching an incident where there was a Chinese restaurant based in Lome, Togo, that has been asking the villages for pangolins, and so they're investigating what's going on there. So, and that's all based on local communication. Everything is local communication there. What's neat, when Justin talks about some of the work that he's doing over there, I mean, when it's local communication, I'm talking about they're not picking up cell phones and meetings are happening over the cell phone kind of thing. When the meeting takes place or communication takes place with the people over there, they will literally go to your front door, and that's where you're going to have that meeting right there. And so everything is very local, which I think is awesome. So some of the cool things that have started coming, and just in the past 2 years of Pangolin conservation, is one is the diet. So being able to understand their diet allows us to continue doing et situ conservation efforts, and that just means that we're able to better understand this animal out of its natural habitat. And so being able to prepare food that this animal can eat is, I mean, that's a big thing when it comes to having a successful conservation program. And so there's a short video, and there's this recipe is a very interesting recipe But essentially, this is a bowl of ground up insects, of different types of insects, which is really gross. It does smell very awful, just an FYI. And he's sprinkling formic acid on it right now. And then they're putting in a gelling agent. And what you essentially are doing is you create this brick of ground up deliciousness insects. And a lot of protein. If you can imagine just wafting that. And so then you let it solidify because it has the gelling agent, like gelatin, if you're creating jello kind of thing. And then once you do that, you'll break it open, break it up, you'll cut it up, and then you grind it up, and then they consume that ground up meal, which is, it's disgusting, but I'm sure it's delicious. And what's neat that's come from this is when I'm saying, when the diet, it's not just, we're not just going through and saying, oh, will you eat this? Oh, will you eat this? Oh, will you eat this? It's actually looking at, we get down to the point where you are looking at what's coming out of the back end and seeing what nutrients are being absorbed, and then finding out what nutrients there are locally in Togo, and how can that be replicated in a diet over here. So there's a lot of science that goes in behind this of figuring out a proper diet, and then doing the analysis of seeing what's being absorbed and what's not being absorbed. And so these guys are on a very strict, very special diet. Yes?
Why do you, I guess, grind up the insects, gel them, cut it into slices, and grind it up again? Why not just feed them the ground up insects without gelling?
Because there is, I'm going to give you my answer, but Justin might have a different answer. But my reasoning is because of that formic acid. It's a liquid component, and it has to be mixed in evenly with everything. And then you just can't give them that because it's kind of a powdery form. So it's not really well, they don't like it.
Something to chew?
I'm not sure about chewing. It's just, it's, I don't know. It's a good question. We'll find out the answer for that. And if Justin's on there and he says the answer, please let us know. Other things that have come from this, from Pangolin Conservation, is that we've had the first white-bellied tree pangolin born in captivity and born in the United States ever. And this is actually a picture of the little muffin right there, and his mom. And this picture is actually, what's really cool about this as well is if Joel Sartori came to St. Augustine and actually photographed these organisms. And Joel Sartori, his photographs are amazing, and his focus is, his goal in life as a photographer is to go and take a photograph of every endangered species to help communicate the importance of these species, and that to bring knowledge and awareness about these species. So this is the first baby born in captivity, which is very cool. Other things that have come from this, and more on the global scale of this, is it was actually last month that the organization, the CITES organization, or the Convention of on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Essentially, it's a group of international organizations that decide on whether a species, what protection level does a species get in regards to being able to trade it internationally. And so in October, this organization decided that all pangolins are going to be listed as Appendix 1, which means that there is no international trade whatsoever of this organism. It's the highest that you can give to an organism. And so what this means, though, the benefits about this is that, so for example, if they're being illegally trafficked over to Asia, as opposed to it being more of a regional legal issue, it's now a national. So the country of China or the country of Indonesia, right? they have to deal with it as a country. It's not a regional effort now. So it's more, it has more legal precedence over it. The enforcement, there's supposed to be more enforcement that comes along with this as well. The downside, there's not really a downside to it, but what needs to be thought about is that these organisms were already, you had to have very special permits to be able to trade them in the first place. They were already being illegally trafficked in the first place. So there's questions being asked, well, how is this going to continue stopping illegal trafficking? Because it's already happening, right? So that's what Pangolin Conservation is really looking for, is taking this local ecosystem-based approach to the conservation that then will hopefully spread globally as well. So there's kind of this bottom up, and then the CITES group is top down kind of thing. So hopefully we meet in the middle of the true conservation of this species. Yes?
Justin has a response to your question. Apparently pangolins can't chew, and so by immersing it in gelatin, it replicates the texture and size of ants. So it's just a personal preference. They seem to like it more than eating just straight powder.
So generally they eat ants like anteaters.
Generally, and termites and things like that. So, yes. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, in regards to this animal being an ambassador, this is just an example of just in the past years of what's come from the pangolin conservation of being over in Togo, Africa. The first is, as I mentioned before, is the Togo slippery frog, and this is the actual image of tadpoles that have been recovered from that pool. These guys are critically endangered. Another frog that has been seen on this mountain range is the Ukami reed frog. There's also Walter's duiker, which is a tiny little deer. It's the cutest little thing you've ever seen. And then what's really neat about it is this area, the Palame area in Togo, is where the largest, West Africa's largest colony of straw-colored fruit bats is found. And what's neat about that is they actually worship the fruit bats as gods, which is kind of cool. And then we talked about the bark spider. That was a newly discovered species. And so what's the other things that have come from this research and being over there is that, going back again to that mountain range that's next to Palame in Togo, is we're looking currently on being able to establish that mountain range as a preserve, because these organisms are found on this mountain range. And so that'll be really cool if that happens. That'll be really neat. There is a link. There was actually a National Geographic article that was recently published regarding the rediscovery of the Togo slippery frog, which is a really cool read. And there's a link to it in the presentation if you're interested. So if you are interested in helping out, this is a global thing, so it's how can we help out together kind of thing. So the first thing is just telling people about pangolins, or pangolins, however you want to pronounce it. And you're welcome to donate to Pangolin Conservation as well. In December, so in 2 months, we're going to be launching a citizen science initiative where you'll be able to classify gridded habitat types using satellite photography. So it's kind of if you guys have ever been to, I think it's Zooverse, or it sounds like that, where it's this very large scale citizen science program where you can sign up to help with other people's research, and essentially you look at photographs, and depending on the type of research, you can tell the scientist what's in that photograph. And that's really important, because the example that I started helping out with on one of the research projects was done in Massachusetts, off the coast there. And what they were doing is they had a submersible. Like I said, I'm a water baby, so I was looking at the ocean. They had a submersible going over the bottom and taking a photograph every meter. And they were doing this over a very large scale. So there was over like 1.6 million photos. No graduate student, poor graduate student, or no scientist can go through 1.6 million photos by themselves and see what's in that photo. So they did this whole citizen science initiative to help them out, and that's what we're hoping to replicate here with looking at the habitat types of where they're found there. And just to conclude, before we break out Scar, is this video is just a really short cool video that you're welcome to, if you want to tell others about pangolins. This is I think it's 2-minute long video about pangolins essentially. And this was actually filmed in St. Augustine, which is kind of cool. Oops. Let's see. What did I do? I hope I didn't break it. We're just going to go here, and hopefully it'll work. And what's really neat is that this has started to become a really big collaborative effort, which I think is really awesome. These are some of the partners that have been assisting with our conservation efforts. Coral and Oak are the ones that helped us create that video. And then we have Chicago Zoological Society, Gladys Porter, Zoo, the Columbus and Aquarium Zoo, the Memphis Zoo, the Turtleback Zoo and the Pittsburgh Zoo, and then the University of Lomé there in Togo, helping and assisting with the research efforts. And if Justin is constantly, Pangolin, we are constantly posting on our social media of what's going on with Pangolin conservation. So we have the website, there's the Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. There's a newsletter, and then again, if you're interested in donating to assist with the conservation efforts, there's the link for donating. And do you guys have any questions? That is a great question that we do not know the answer to, unfortunately. That is a really good question, though. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that we shift over in camera mode to show the image here. Okay. And what's going to happen is I'm going to bring out Scar, who is a white-bellied tree pangolin, and I will try to walk him around as best as possible. He might get a little upset, so if we can just remain calm, and I'm going to keep a towel around him just because one of their also defense mechanisms is they like to spray urine. That's always fun. But if you do want to touch him, do we have hand sanitizer?
I can go check. There's some right there.
Oh, we have some right here. So, yeah.
Even with hand sanitizer, per our vet, if you had any intention of participating in a dolphin interactive program today, I'm afraid you cannot touch Scar.
Okay.
However, if we're not going to do a dolphin program, you're good to go.
Okay. And then I do recommend sanitizing your hands and maybe going to the restroom and washing them afterwards. And that's, I mean, he's spraying pee, so don't want pangolin pee all over your hands.
Are we able to take a photo?
You
Maybe after?
maybe after. That's a good question. Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
Can I go invite the trainers in? They were pretty
Oh
excited
yes,
about
yes, yes,
this.
yes. I remember the yes. They did mention this.
How many are in captivity?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
This one's here local?
This
and,
one's
and
local.
you said the one that had the baby?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm. That's a good question for Justin. All right, come on, Scar. Feeder. And his claws. One of the other things I forgot to mention regarding the white-bellied tree pangolins is so they are arboreal. So one of the neat things about them is that tail is a prehensile tail as well. So it's used for grabbing onto things. And then their claws are incredibly big. I mean, they're just essentially a ball of muscle.
Where does this one live?
This one is living in St. Augustine. Oops, sorry, burn away. There we go. It's okay. This one is, we believe, full grown, yep. And his name is Scar. Where am I at? There I am. And you can see here, he's got that nice scar. And that's actually, we believe he got that scar from because what they do when they do the agricultural fields, they burn them for the palm oil. And we believe that he was caught in the fire of that.
Nervous.
Ripping on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is he not here with the lights on?
Yeah, okay. Ripping on tight. Trying to dig. And then his belly is super soft and fuzzy. It's really cute. But I don't want to show his belly because then I'm putting him in projectile position.
So they do have hair on their.
They do, and you'll see on the muzzle that they have hair on their muzzle as well, and around his eyes.
This is the only mammal with scales.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Animal with scales. That's what it says.
Are their tongues prehensile?
I don't believe their tongues are, no, just their tails. He's a cutie. So guys, what's really cool about this too is I brought him to our summer camps at TTN, and what's neat about this is, this is one of the only pangolins that has been taken and shown to the general public here in America. This is a very cool thing to see, yeah.
Once in a lifetime.
No, they don't like it.
They have teeth, but they don't chew.
That's a good question. I'm not sure about teeth. I haven't opened. I don't want to open.
Does his nose
Oh, they can kill. Yeah, they definitely kill. I don't think they use them for money. They will grind them out into powder and that's how they get their medicinal. I don't know. They are incredibly strong. They haven't pierced my skin, but they can definitely scratch marks and they can maybe.
found those forms? Make sure you do both sides and put your zip codes on.
He's a cutie though. And you can see those claws how they're used for. They're definitely used for also very temperamental too.
Hey Kenneth, Justin has a response to the question about how many are in captivity.
Okay. Yeah. How many are? What did Justin say about captivity?
He doesn't have a specific number, but he says not very many. They're working on trying to get more zoos across the USA to have the facilities to take care of them, but right now they require such specialized care that not many zoos actually can.
And one of the cool things I like about his tail too is if you look on the, I know buddy, but he's got, it's like a little thumb on the very tip of his tail. It's kind of hard to see because he's got it wrapped around. But it's a really soft little pad.
Answer questions.
Asking me questions. It's very good. That helps the heart.
Somebody also responded.
Really?
Yeah.
How cool is that?
What are you doing?
Very dry.
I can't wait to
But I mean,
email my
just
friend.
how would you meet like
YouTube
these
shut
animals?
down.
They're so different than
Pangolins. It's funny because the kids at school will probably know about it more than the adults that I know because of the movie.
Well, do you guys have any other questions? This is a male or a female? This is a male.
As far as gestation, if one was born in captivity, they should have some kind of
I don't know.
capability to this one too.
They don't actually give birth.
Um,
Some animals
I'm trying to remember. I have seen him drink water, but it's I think that's what it's not. He actually gets to the water. It's just that they're drinking. If I remember correctly, Justin said that they like to drink water out of like leaves and stuff like that. They don't. They just don't dip themselves in. They like to get the little tiny things. Yeah. Look, you see it's called a little bit better. Yeah. So it's perfect for digging those hard to reach places to try to get those plants out and and hanging on, yeah. There we go.
Now, where do they sleep in trees? Do they sleep on the limbs or do they fall hold in the tree like a little gem?
I don't believe they create the dens. They will find like places to rest on the tree. So usually they're really big trees, so they will just they don't create their own little den. I don't think that. And then like in the ponds, they'll be like, I guess they're not, but what Justin has described is that they like find where the hearts of the ponds are, kind of that center, and that's where they. Oh yeah, he's in his little hall now. He's happier. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you guys very much, and if you guys have questions, please feel free to email or ask on Facebook. And if you're interested in next month's Marineland lecture, we will be posting registration by the end of today to get that going as well for next month.
And am I right in remembering that next month is Rediscovery?
Next month is Joy.
Right, well.
Joy with Right-Well, Sparkle and Right-Well.
Where does Scarlett live?
He lives at the Pangolin Conservation locality in St. Augustine. Yeah.
Well, as you folks are all done and you've gotten your last looks, Joan and some of our other volunteers are going to be bringing you all back around to the other side. And then, like I said, you are free to hang out for as long as you like. And we would love to have you do that. But we can't mill around
welcome. You're welcome. Thank you guys. Y'all want to see them more? A nice little protection. Alright, we're gonna stick him back in, man.
Nice job. Thank you. Sorry to get here late.
Oh,
Apologize.
no worries.
You know me, I always got a flavor. This is so fascinating. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you
Yeah, so
guys.
make sure you let me know when you start getting
I feel like I just experienced like something no one, not many people in America really know about. That's so funny.
Oh, thank you guys.
Thank you guys very much for helping out today.
Well, here, I'm gonna just end this real quick. Thank you guys for watching, and if you have questions, just check out our Facebook page or our website. Thank you.